Hello, my friends. Let's talk about Mass Effect Andromeda. But before we do, I have some special announcements that I want to get into. The first being that our channel has its very first Patreon subscriber, a guy by the name of Tim Wynn. And, the Patreon account is something that I started quite a while ago. I've stopped talking about it recently at the end of my videos because I feel as though the channel earned your hasn't quite earned the right to ask for patrons, and so I'm trying to get to that point. But I'm really excited about this. This is kind of a big thing for me because it tells me that I am definitely doing something right, that there is an extremely kind soul out there who's willing to put $1 on the work that I do and wants to see me make more of it in the future. It's as meaningful to me as whenever someone makes a comment down below and we get to talk a little bit about the ideas expressed or some other ideas that people got from games or shows that I talked about. And it's really inspiring. It makes me feel like I'm doing something good, that this is still worthwhile, and I'm not just talking for myself here. So, thank you very much, Tim. I'm glad to have you on board. You're the first official friender of the Soccer Tetris YouTube channel. My second bit of good news is that I am moving out of the parents' house for the second time today, actually. You'll be seeing this the day after I have set up in my new condo, and don't think it's too fancy, because when I say condo, I kind of mean more like apartment in a complex that calls itself a condo complex. It's nothing that fancy. It's the most affordable thing for the space that I needed, that I could find. Well, it sort of found me. It was a really lucky break, and I'm excited for it. So the schedule for the channel might be affected. I don't know. But I will be doing everything in my power to make sure a video still goes up next Saturday as well. And I will say that being able to talk about Mass Effect or Mass Effect Andromeda specifically, is going to give me a little bit more leeway for this transitional period. And we're going to do this very casual conversation format, just because I don't think Mass Effect Andromeda had too much to actually go on, not enough to have a formal analysis the way I've done with my other projects. The main reason being, if I can just jump right into it, is that I think Mass Effect Andromeda was trying too hard to be Mass Effect. It was living under this really enormous shadow, and whereas Mass Effect took 3 whole games to span all of these great and complex issues about the nature of society and life and technology and ethics and etc., etc., Mass Effect Andromeda felt like it was trying to do that all at once as soon as the game started. Like, after that first little actiony in media res start to the game, whatever. It just kind of started having you just thrown into all of these extremely deep and ultra-personal conversations with extremely difficult topics with every single person you talk to. And it felt extremely forced. And the main way I can describe this is with one of your crewmates is a person named Suvi. who's a scientist, whose funny little quirk is that she just keeps eating things to see if they're good and can, be nutritious, well, it's stupid. But the pretty much the first conversation you have with her is this kind of diatribe about how being a scientist made her spiritual and religious because of how grand everything was, how orderly everything was. And she thought it was just, unlikely that there was no ordering principle, that there was no thing to order it when it could easily have just been chaos all the time. And it was very forced. You more like just say, "Hi, why'd you join the initiative? You're a scientist and you like God? What's up with that? That's weird." And it's like, well, no, Mass Effect, Andromeda. It's not weird for a scientific person or a logical person to also be religious. I don't know how much they wanted that to be a theme, but it was pretty much only a theme with Suvi. And it stopped being explored right after that conversation. And so it just kind of felt like they came up and they just had their issue stick, they whapped you with it, and said, "Yeah, look at that crazy, unique concept that we threw in there. A scientist that's also religious. Ooh. No. That's not innovative. That's not new, and you didn't earn that payoff. You didn't earn that topic of conversation. You just threw it at us. And that wasn't good." And that's really how it felt for, well, almost everything that ended up being a dialogue between characters. And I feel like that happened because of the more open world concept that they were going for. They couldn't predict, or at least they didn't predict, where the player was going to be at any given moment. And since they couldn't predict that, they kind of just put all of the big payoff moments everywhere. And it didn't work. Because there was no build-up. There's no earning the emotionality, or no guiding us through the steps of an argument to get to that payoff. So that's the disappointing part of the game for me. In terms of its technical problems, I feel as though people have talked about those enough. They've ragged on those enough. For the most part, they're fixed, and the game is playable. And ultimately, I do think that Mass Effect Andromeda is a good game. The problem is that it is just a good game. It is not a great game. It is not a game that earns the title Mass Effect. And that is an issue if you're going to put it in the legacy of a game that did earn those morals, that earned those conversations over time. I will say that Mass Effect Andromeda had one thing going for it that really did shine through as the ultimate unique idea or lesson that they want to put forth. And that is the idea that life is rare and precious. In the original Mass Effect setting, the Milky Way setting, they introduce all of these different kinds of alien life forms, as well as mysterious alien life forms from the past and mysterious alien life forms coming in the future, and artificial alien life forms that are self-reproducing all over the place. So life is abundant and common in the original Mass Effect concept. And in Mass Effect Andromeda, it's the opposite, because you get to that galaxy and you encounter one new alien race right away, the Ket, and they're evil and they're going to kill everything. You encounter the next alien race, and they're good and super emotional and pretty much just humans with a little bit of religious system that falls in line with Plato's theory of memory, which was made to combat the sophist argument that no one could ever learn anything, mixed in with a little bit of Buddhist reincarnation, but they never explore that topic very deeply at all, and it's kind of dropped as soon as you leave the planet Havarl. So that point's not really interesting to me anymore. And then that was pretty much it, except for like a couple different alien dogs, raptors, and a gorilla. That's pretty much what the enemies were for the entire game. And some robots here and there that don't count because they're just autonomous machines, but not artificial intelligence, according to the lore. It was just there was no life. There was no life in the galaxy. But something else that they did, which was actually where this theme shone through, was from the fact that you could scan the conditions of these planets when you were on the world map. And every scan would give you this little blurb of information that described what was going on with that planet chemically, or its radiation, or its topography, or anything like that. And a good portion of those would say, here's the one thing that is a problem with this planet and why it is completely unlivable and cannot support life. And after reading a number of those, it really started to sink in that the game wanted you to think that life was difficult, that it's not guaranteed, that it's far more common for life to not exist than to exist, which is not the case with the Mass Effect universe before. To give a couple examples, one planet that I scanned basically said, here's this giant river that formed, but it formed a few centuries ago because of this crazy, rare, like, mega storm, perfect storm that happened on the planet, and somehow caused liquid water to form and build and stay on the surface of the planet. And so we're seeing this massive river, but it also says, but the overwhelming heat and radiation of the planet is making this water contaminated, and it's evaporating. This river is going to be gone within a couple decades, and then the planet is completely unlivable. Or here's this other planet whose rotation is just slightly too slow, so some portion of the planet is basically constantly on fire, and the other side of the planet is always frozen in an ultra winter, and that makes it completely unlivable. Or there is this other example of a planet where the scan said there are these small jellyfish-like life forms still living underneath the surface of the water here, but it is a leftover from a planet-wide extinction that is still occurring on this planet. And so these small little jellyfish, while they would have been promising before, are actually evidence that the planet is on its last leg, that this is the last area where life can be supported, and then in a few years, not even decades or centuries, in a few years, it's going to be gone. So it's like, they really did present this idea that any given condition could be the thing that makes life impossible. And I feel as though that idea is a lot more consistent with what our world, what our universe is already like. Because, of course, we only have one case of life to go off of. And it would be really cool if we could find another case. But it seems as though that life is so uncommon in the grand scheme of time and physics and the way solar systems form, that we just are not able to see it somewhere else. And so the idea that if we had the capability to see it, to actually go out and look for it, we would still not find it, is pretty devastating. I'm not going to lie, that's pretty devastating. But it does reinforce the idea that life is precious, that life is special, even if you don't attribute any sort of spiritual or cosmological sense of important. By the mere fact of its rarity, it is important. And so I'm going to try to stop talking about Mass Effect Andromeda there, because if I keep going, I'm probably going to get pretty negative on the game. I did enjoy my time with it. I probably spent too much time with it. If I do suggest this game to anyone, I would suggest just stay on the path of the main storyline. You will get as much out of the game from just doing the main story than you would doing the main story with all of the side content as well. So that's going to be my main recommendation. I did like it. It's just not the greatest game. It is a good game. It is an average game. If you feel like you just want to run around and shoot things up like in Borderlands for a little while, and you don't want to play Borderlands, this is a good thing to do. It doesn't play like Mass Effect, so if you're looking for Mass Effect, that's not what you're going to get. And that's really all I have to say about it. So, as always, if you have any suggestions of games or shows or anything that you think warrants an evaluation or you would like to see my take on, please let me know in the comments. Feel free to talk about Mass Effect Andromeda or Mass Effect and any of the ideas that you think are important to the series in the comments as well. I'd love to engage with you all in that conversation if you want to have it. And share this with your friends, all that YouTube stuff. Subscribe to the channel so you can see the better evaluations that I have planned in the future. And as always, stay true.